And I'm praying about a whole series in Exodus. Maybe when we finish the book of Acts, maybe we'll go into Exodus. I love the book of Exodus, and maybe that we'll see where we're going. Maybe a shorter series. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. We'll just have to wait until we get through with Acts and see what God's up to. So I'm jumping ahead, and we're going to learn about Exodus tonight. Exodus chapter 2. Are we ready, Martha? And I'll jump into it. We're going. Exodus chapter 2, and I want to give you a little backdrop. I'm going to give you 3 things right out of the gate, and this might come across a little different, but the very first one is Exodus chapter 1. And you all know this, but I'm going to refresh you for just a moment. In Exodus chapter 1, we are introduced to a man named Moses. Moses means to draw forth out of the water. That's his name, and we see Moses here. And if I was to just give an overall title to chapter 1, I would call it an uncontrollable situation. An uncontrollable situation. You see, Moses had came out of a generation where they had forgotten Joseph. They had forgotten about him and how, he was the prince of Egypt and all that good stuff. And there was a new Pharaoh, and he had just like, Joseph? I don't know Joseph nothing. And in fact, there's getting to be so many of these Hebrews that we're going to have to start regulating the population a little bit. And we're going to have to kill every male. This is nothing more than just killing babies. And they're going to take them down to the Nile, and they're going to throw them into the river and killing babies. Right and left, right and left. And every Hebrew male is to be thrown out there, and they're going to be crocodile bait. It's sickening. It's killing of innocent children. And yet, nonetheless, we see there in an uncontrollable situation, they tried to hide. The midwives tried to hide the babies for so long. And we know that mom was trying to shelter baby Moses up to about the time of about 3 months old and couldn't conceal the cry any longer or the babe any longer, and it was getting dangerous, so therefore she made an ark. And you say, Moses was on the ark? Yes, Moses was in an ark. It was a woven basket. She pitched it inside and out, just like the big ark, the big boat. And that's putting that tar-like waterproof substance. I can only imagine that plan in her mind of putting and weaving and putting it together and making this little boat, this little basket, and having to place a baby in this basket. And yes, even Moses, like all the other little Hebrew children, was sent out into the river. But as that babe was set out into the water, was watching to see where that little boat was going to go and what bank it might come upon. And it came upon Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter goes down and retrieves the babe and says, oh, this is a Hebrew baby. We must find a Hebrew to nurse the baby. So wait a minute. You're not going to kill it? You're not going to take the baby's life? No. Moses was drawn forth out of the water, and she's watching, and they're saying, go get me one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby. Well, of course, the sister runs and says, hey, whoa, we'll take care of the baby. And they're like, we're going to pay you to take care of the baby. Wow. God works in unusual circumstances. God works in uncontrollable situations. God is still working even in the midst of disaster. Amen? He's not done yet. So then we see in Exodus chapter 2, we see here that it's basically Moses is grown. Moses has been brought up in the Egyptian home. He has a Hebrew that's taking care of him, but yet he's been brought up in this environment. But he has an uprising conviction in him. And I don't care where you've been. You may have been on this side of the tracks or that side of the tracks, a good scenario or a bad scenario, good situation, bad situation. But God's convicting and working on his heart to where there's something not right about what's going on around him. He doesn't like what he sees in the land. He doesn't like the way that he's seeing people treat one another. God's moving upon him. And he sees an Egyptian, to which he is now, mistreating a Hebrew slave. Now, Moses, whether he be hero, whether he may be henchman, however you see it, he could have stood by and allowed oppression and things to come upon another human being, or he could have rose to the occasion. And he rises to the occasion, but he does it in a way that he goes and he takes that Egyptian, gets into a struggle with him, kills him. You're saying Moses was a murderer? Listen, you don't know my black sin-stricken heart. If you think it, you've done it. All of us. And you're saying Moses was the leader? Moses is a leader here, and we see that he kills this man, and then he tries to cover it up, literally. He tries to cover him up. He tries to bury him, and then he goes out to the Hebrew people. So the ones that he was defending, the very people that he was trying to protect, they say, are you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian? And then Moses gets scared. Moses has an uprising conviction. We saw that he was born in an uncontrollable situation. He's in an uprising conviction, and now chapter 3 we see he's in an unusual circumstance because he had to flee and he had to leave. He had to leave being a prince of Egypt and being brought up as an Egyptian, and he runs away at the point of such contention. And we pick up in chapter 3, verses 1 through 4 for tonight. Where does he run off to? He runs off and leaves, and we're going to see an encounter here in verses 1 through 4. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and he came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called out and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. What I want to talk to you about tonight is unusual circumstances. You know, we've been in an uncontrollable situation and an upright life, but here in this unusual circumstance, this Moses, he's been brought up as a leader. God had his hand upon him. God had a plan for him, but Moses would have grown up in the court of Pharaoh. He would have been somebody who, now that Pharaoh probably would have passed, and in fact, commentaries have indicated that this would have probably been Ramesses II, and that this unfair treatment and things being brought upon Moses and how he's going to respond. And Moses gets angry. I'll just tell you, I don't know about you, but anybody in here ever get angry? Anybody in here ever get hangry? I flat out get hangry sometimes. And when we go through the Sermon on the Mount, we're going to talk about anger and how to handle anger. I think we all, being human, and I think everyone in here is, how to deal with anger. Moses dealt with anger in a different way. He was angry, and he acted upon his anger, and some would call it self-defense or defending someone else. But here he killed that Egyptian, and yet Pharaoh, they're going to punish him because there was laws, and there's laws today. You just don't go around killing people, and even though it's not right. But Moses knew that he's in that real danger. And we see that he's going to flee to a land of Midian. Now, while he flees, he goes and he's thirsty. And he encounters some women. And here comes some herdsmen. And they go to run off these women herdsmen. And they're going to run them off. And Moses is like, whoa, 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 hey, there's something burning inside of me that just like I saw the Hebrews being mistreated, I see these herdsmen coming and mistreating these women, And they go and he runs them off. And they're like, hey, why don't you come to our house tonight? Moses had no place to go, so he goes with them to Midian. And he meets to what's going to be his bride and his daddy-in-law, Jethro. Not the one from the Beverly Hillbillies, okay? That was Max Baer, not to be confused. But Jethro. And he goes on, as we see that Moses had been in the court systems, he's been around, he knows things, but he's basically left being in a very highfalutin position to now becoming a shepherd. And you got to understand, being a shepherd is being a leader. You're saying, who are you leading? Sheep? He had a responsibility because they were his father-in-law's sheep, and he's taking care of them, and he's looking after them and looking after the flock. And you know, shepherd is really a code word for leader. And God was preparing Moses for something that he'd been preparing him for all of his life. From the time that he was born, placed in a little ark, a little basket. From the time that he was swept up and picked up. From the time that he saw the oppression of the Hebrews. From the time that he met his family and his wife. God's working on him to be a leader, just like David was a shepherd. In fact, Jesus, we know him as the good shepherd. So the Bible introduces Moses here as a shepherd, and he's come to the mount of the foot of Mount Sinai. And now, all throughout his life, God has got Moses in a place to where he says, okay, now, all your life circumstances, I've brought you to a moment to where I have something for you to do. And I'm going to speak to you now, Moses. Moses was doing his daily task. Moses had a new life. Moses had moved. He's changed positions. He's changed titles. He's got a family. He's in a new chapter of life. And now he has this unusual circumstance that's going to happen to him. You all know this story. We've been taught these things since Bible school, or from VBS to Sunday school. And we know that here at the foot of Mount Sinai, he looks and he sees something that catches his eye. I've got to investigate this. I don't know what that is, but that looks unusual over there. I've got to go see what this is. Almost looks like something's on fire. I guess I'll have to call the Midian fire department. I don't know what to do, but something's not right over there. And as he draws closer, he looks, and it's more than a reflection. It's more than just a glare off of something shiny. He gets there, and what he sees is a burning bush, a flame of fire, but yet this bush is so hot it's not consumed. It's kind of like a day out there like today. Maybe your flowers are wilting like mine. I have to put some water on them. I don't see where Moses ran over and got a pail of water and poured it on this, because as he approached it, God spoke to him. God had to shake him up to get his attention. In fact, God not only had to shake him up, he had to get him out of his comfort zone, had to get him out of his normal routine, had to get him out of his home. And God had been working throughout his life to get him to this chapter in life for such a time as this. It's a very unusual circumstance. It's different. And in fact, we see here in verse 4, whenever Moses turned aside to see this great sight, obviously he was inquisitive. In verse 4 it says, and when the Lord saw that, saw what? Saw that flame of fire. He said when he saw that, he turned aside to see. God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. I brought all that, chapter 1, 2, and 3, to get this to a place and point just for you tonight, closing time. Because I think that sometimes we look at our life as just one big accident. Sometimes things in our life happen that we wish would never happen. Moses didn't ask to be put into water. He didn't ask to be put into an Egyptian family. He didn't ask to be outcast. He didn't ask to be put aside. He didn't. But what might have seemed like a tragedy turned out to be a very positive thing. He's brought up and he's reared up in the Pharaoh. He's got all the education. He's got everything. But it was through life circumstances. Now he gets to a place to where he commits an act. And in all of our lives, I look back over my life, and it's amazing how one night could change everything. One awkward teenage moment in life can put you at a crossroad, and it's 1,000 wonders that any of us are alive and that we survived those awkward years. Can I hear an amen to that? Amen. We've all been put at crossroad moments. And I see that Moses was at a crossroad moment to where he had to make a decision to say, either I'm going to go along to get along, or I'm going to go down this path. And God just took him and to get us to where he was. It's amazing to see how God intervened. He had an occupation change, he had a life change, he had a family changed, and he had a new chapter in life, and he goes to Midian, and there God is working on him, and he's had a change of pace. And it might seem like, man, everything's just fell apart around me. My life's over. My life is done. I've lost everything. I lost everybody. I lost it all, and I'm out here wandering around in the wilderness. Lord, what do you have for me next? I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Lord, I don't even know. My life is so messed up. I've made so many mistakes. I've messed up so bad. I killed a man. Now what do you want me to do? Lord, I'm just seeking direction. I don't know what is next. And he hears a struggle going on over here, and he looks up and he sees some women being abused. He says, I don't know what's next in my life. I don't know I'm on the run. I'm a wanted man. What do you want me to do, God? And he intervenes and he runs them off. God was directing his steps even then. And even then he goes up on this mount and God says, hey Moses, you're aggressive. You haven't went too far that I can't use you. I know that you've sinned, you've killed a man, we realize this, but yet I can still use you. Your life still has value, and I see something in you, and I want you to go through this unusual circumstance that I've brought you to this place because I have something else in store for you. I'm going to use my own family. I hate to do that. I don't often use my own family as scenarios or circumstances, but Mom had me when she was 15, 16 years old. Mom didn't finish high school. She went to work right after work at Rose's. If you're watching, Mom, just kind of sharing your testimony. I guess it's yours to share. I lived it, I guess, but Mom gave up everything for me. I'm very, very humbled for that. It's not Mother's Day, but I'm preaching on moms. But anyway, Mom went to work at Rose's. She worked at Long John Silver's too and Rose's, and it was good. It helped us. We just got by with what Mom and I had. It was Mom and me. When Rose's went out of business in Danville, she thought her world had ended. She thought that was it. She thought everything had just crumbled in on her. I mean, again, life circumstances. And Mom went back to school, got her GED, and she got her obstetrician license. She went to work at an eye care place, which was a lot less strenuous, a lot easier of work for the time. She got her obstetrician thing to be able to do that. She went to work and ended up running the eyeglass place. And then she moved on. Now she's at Walmart in Danville doing eyeglasses. And I'm saying that because what she thought was the end of it all, she thought, what am I ever going to do? How am I ever going to be? It propelled her and accelerated her to get to a different place in life, to get surrounded with different people in life. And my mom and Gary, I'm so proud of them. They're at a different stage in life, in church now. Things have changed now. And I just think that God's using all of us in our life circumstances. Sometimes you may have been in a position where your job ended or a loved one passed or something happened. Maybe things interjected. God is taking all these scenarios and situations. For my Bible tells me in the book of Romans 8:28, all things work to good. To what? To those who love the Lord. And I believe that God's still working. And I don't know where you're at tonight, but in some unusual circumstances in your life, some course that you may have think got off the rails, God's still using and working and wants to use you. And in this next chapter of life, no excuses of age. God doesn't look at your abilities. He looks at your availabilities. We've never been where we are right now. And I don't know what unusual circumstance or life you might be going through. And I don't know exactly who this is for other than me. And sometimes I just get to places where, Lord God, I don't know what you have for me next. But here am I. Take my life. Use me. You got that song, Steve? Take my life? You know that one? We'll dismiss on that. Take my life. Lead me, Lord.